Hey guys, what's up? My name is Kurotura and welcome to my channel. I've got something a little special planned today. Well, special for me at least because it's the first guide I've ever made. Um, I, I have a history of making showcases for gameplay I consider good quality. So I thought what better time to step out of my comfort zone and make a guide than to defend my boy Calcharo's name, you know? Yeah, put some respect on him. Many of you are probably familiar with this type of game from something like Genshin, but personally, I avoided that game for its entire lifespan. So, for me, I mostly play a lot of JRPGs. One of my favorites being Xenoblade. If you can tell by the music, something's wrong with you. Final Fantasy 14, played a lot. Samurai, loved that game. At least when it was more difficult. And a lot of MMOs from back in the day slash fighting games. Calcharo stuck out to me aside from the badass look because I enjoy characters with a deep skill curve. I don't like knowing I'm using the same unit as most other people, so a natural selection factor, does work out in my favor in that regard. Today we will take a look at the character through the lens of trying to understand how to use him better. We'll start with his core stats, then get to his skills, echoes and sequences, and full rotation, the whole shebang. You'll probably catch me using a good amount of terminology that most of you probably do know, but for the ones that don't, I'll probably throw some explanation on screen for whatever is necessary. Let's get started. Alright guys, let's start with his stats. I think the stats are pretty straightforward. All you really want is a good amount of attack, crit rate, crit damage, and energy. Those would be the core stats you focus on rolling for, and the stats that you prioritize on the character. In this case, I have around 20% ER. You don't really need more than this. You can have 30 if you want, but the way things play out, especially if you're doing cancels well and trying to min-max, you really don't need any more than this. If you get a res skill, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's actually pretty useful, considering how often you actually press E. And the bread and butter of the secondary stats is what I would consider Resonance Liberation. Well, other than energy, obviously. But Resonance Liberation is pretty good. As much of it as you can get would be nice, considering how much you're going to try to uptime Calcharo in ult. So, I think that would pretty much cover his core stats. All right. Next on the checklist, we have we have his weapon. Typically, I'd say your options are between Autumn Trace, Verdant, and Lustrous. I prefer Lustrous. It works best for me. It gives me the ER I need, good attack. Being an attack weapon. It does give Resonance Liberation on the bonus, which can proc up to 3 times, which pretty much says Calcharo E. And I have it at R3. I was lucky in that regard. Verdant is also a great option. Most of you probably already have it for your Gion, and you don't want to go out of your way to get another weapon for Calcharo, so obviously Verdant is good. You just don't really get as much use out of the ability, but still, for the most part, it's not that big of a deal. So Calcharo, definitely good with the Void set. The bonuses are electric damage 10%, I believe, and the 5-piece bonus is heavy attack and resonance skill triggering 15% electric bonus up to 2 times. For the costs, I feel like it's typically better to run 4-3-3-1-1, and also the options of the 2 4s are Tempest Mephis and Thundering. The difference between them really comes down to executing the ability itself. Unfortunately, Tempest has electric heavy, which you don't get as much use out of the heavy, but it is easier to execute. It only takes 2 hits, while Thundering takes up to 5 hits, but it does give you electric damage and liberation. For the sake of comfort and rotation, I use Tempest Mephis and not Thundering, but Thundering is a good option. If you have it, by all means you can use it. The threes, you just need to make sure you get electric. Attack isn't a bad option either, but electric is just better. And the ones, you want to get attack. Alright guys, next we'll tackle his skills. First, we have his normal. It's called Gnawing Fangs. It's a 4-part basic attack. Then we have Resonance skill, which is called Extermination Order. It allows 3 consecutive casts of an attack with a bit of time gap in between. Each one that lands, you get a stack of Cruelty, which functions towards his main mechanic for his forte. Speaking of his forte, we have Hunting Mission. Hunting Mission is essentially the trigger for his main mechanic. Mercy while in basic form, Killing Intent while in liberation form. Once you build 3 stacks on your next heavy attack of basic form, you can release Mercy, or during your ultimate, after getting 5 bars of Killing Intent, your next attack becomes Death Messenger. Next we have Phantom Etching, which is his ultimate. This allows you to go into Death Gear state for 11 seconds, which pretty much changes your basic attacks over to Hound's Roar. It's a rapid 5-hit. A rapid 5-hit attack that when you collect all 5 hits triggers a Death Messenger. Your attacks become enhanced by the damage liberation typing for your heavy attack, your dodge counter, and your Death Messenger. So those 3 get a Resonance Liberation bonus, which is why it's pretty useful to get Resonance Liberation as a substat. For his intro skill, we have Wanted Outlaw, which during your exiting your Resonance Liberation, once you do your next intro following having used an ult, you get my brain died. You get Necessary Means. Necessary Means is just an enhanced version of the intro skill. Then you have Shadowy Raid. Shadowy Raid is pretty much an attack. A pretty beefy attack. It's pretty useful. So it benefits his swappy playstyle because it also just generally adds more damage to the run. Now for his stat bonuses, we have crit damage. He does get a juicy 8% on each side, so that's 16% crit damage total, and he gets attack also, which is a great core stat for him. In total, 6% twice, so 12%. Then we have his inherit skill, Bloodshed Awaken. When casting heavy attack Mercy, Calcharo's Resonance Liberation damage bonus is increased by 10% for 15 seconds. This is pretty good because going into ultimate during your rotation, you will be using this, and and your ultimate does cancel it, so you don't need to do the full thing. You just need the initial hits to connect. This is a pretty good one to have. I cannot say the same for this one. This one is a curse. Revenant Rush. For whatever reason, if you enjoy getting your cheeks clapped, this exists. 15%. I feel like it's just better to not get hit if it's within your control. But I say you don't necessarily have to waste material on it. But it's like it exists if you want it. Okay, so next we'll move on to sequences. Alright, so next up we have sequences. Sequence 1, Covert Negotiation. Okay, so pretty much whenever you use Extermination Order, whenever it hits a target, you get 10% more resonance energy. Pretty useful, honestly. It does save you time during your rotation. It triggers once every 20 seconds, so it's not that huge, but you will be using it about maybe once every 20 seconds anyway. So perfectly fine, useful ability, nice S1. Zero sum game. Pretty much once he uses Wanted Criminal or Necessary Means, he gets a 30% skill bonus. I mean, I can't say anything one way or another because you're gonna end up using the skills. But I mean, could it have been something better? Yeah, 30% is pretty good though. So not too much complaints for a standard character, I guess. Then Iron Fist Diplomacy. During Liberation, he gets electro damage bonus by 25%. This is great. 25% more electro damage during ult. I mean, there's just really no negative. It buffs everything you do during ult. It's also probably what I feel is the first real landmark of LB to get for Calcharo. I mean, S1 is good too because it helps your rotation. But S3 is where the first time where you'll really probably feel like a damage difference in his LBs. Dark Alliance. This is great if you are running him with Yinlin. Gives more electro damage to the team, and he can also swap back in to get the same bonus himself, because technically 30 seconds, it doesn't say it's limited to the next character, so within that 30 seconds he can come back and benefit from that same buff himself. It might end up being useful for XY also, so that's something to consider as far as swapping back and forth between them, but I mean, I don't really care so much for that right now. Then you have Unconventional Compact. It essentially just buffs his intros. I mean, is it the best S5? Not really, but 50% damage increase to the intros, not bad. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's something, right? I consider it more of a passover node. Like I wouldn't make a big deal about getting it. To me, it's just 4 to 6. If you somehow manage to, if you have to decide to sit on 5, don't even bother. Just wait from 4 to 6. And the ultimatum is his is his S6. This one is great. When casting Resonance Liberation Death Messenger, Calcharo will summon 2 phantoms to perform coordinated attacks. Each phantom deals electro damage equal to 100% of Calcharo's attack, which is considered Resonance Liberation damage. This is wonderful. Whenever he does DMs, 3 DMs per ult, like I said, in some cases 4. Not really often, but somebody out there can do it, looking at UBZB. And essentially, it just gives him a damage bonus. I'd say the damage looks roughly 20% stronger than an individual hit of Death Messenger. Around there. From what I estimate, it looks about that. So typically if I see 14k on a DM hit, it's usually around 17k. Times 2, because it's 2 of them. So it's actually pretty nice to have this. It's actually pretty nice considering 6 of them during your whole ult set. And it gets the Resonance Liberation bonus also, so kind of just like nice and compact into your kit. It's kind of my whole thing for wanting to LB him in the first place. Like when I started this game, I was praying if I was gonna get off banner, please let it only be Calcharo. I don't know if I got trolled, but I got 4 Calcharo dupes. Think I'm crazy, go ahead, but I did spend one what do you call it, the stupid wave bands on one of the LBs, so kind of got 5, spent for 1, and I managed to S6 him that way. Yeah, so that pretty much covers his kit, and then we'll get into a little bit of tips and tricks, and then we'll look at the run. Okay, so next we have his basic attacks. It's pretty much just a 4-part basic, nothing too special. What's great about it though is it can be tied into his E's. So what you typically do is you do an attack, E, attack, E, attack, cancel, attack, E, and then finish off with the last hit. That's the best way I found to use it. It eats up the least amount of ways that eats up the least amount of space that way. Other than that, you won't really be doing basic all that much on its own. So yeah, next we'll move on to E's itself. Alright, so next we have his E's. As I mentioned before, landing a hit of E gives you 1 bar of cruelty. You need 3 to be able to perform your mercy. And the great thing about E is you are able to cancel it into a character swap. So something that looks like this. So we get to hit 3, and as you do it, you swap. Pretty much it leaves the animation going while you switch off to a different character. That in itself is always a great way to get more DPS because it overlaps, and yeah, pretty useful. Does decent damage too, especially the last hit. A nice sizable chunk of damage. So yeah, that's it for the E. I don't think there's anything too much to mention regarding it. Anything else along the way, I'll probably mention myself. Oh, one thing. When you are doing, if you have a Lustrous Razor, when you start a match, it's usually good to cast the first hit before you ult and then use ult to cancel the hit, because then that gives you at least one of the Resonance Liberation bonuses, which juices up your ult's damage. So that's also something to consider. Alright, so next I want to talk about using Echo during Extermination Order. Pretty much there's a point during the second Extermination Order where it's beneficial to cancel the animation with the Echo. You'll see me do it in this clip, and it kind of serves to help stack that buff window so that you're able to get a bigger chunk of damage out following. Look it over a couple of times. It's a really good trick to have in your pocket, and yeah, let's move on. Alright, so next up we have Phantom Etching, which gives you access to Death Gear. Death Gear is his ult. On the first hit of Death Gear, you'll get a free use of Death Messenger, and every following Death Messenger afterwards requires 5 killing intents. You don't necessarily need to go through all 5 in one basic string. You can actually break it up into multiple parts. So you can do basic, dodge cancel into basic, dodge cancel, basic. You can do basic, dodge cancel, basic into basic, or whatever you feel like, you know, works for you. As long as you get to 5 within a given time period so that you can actually manage to land 3 and 11, you're good. Also, you can still manage to get some damage out of his dodge counter while in Resonance Liberation. Some people try to make it seem as if it's a complete damage loss. It's not. It depends. Can you get a couple of hits in and then dash cancel it to go back to your regular hits, that way adding more damage to it and still managing to land a third DM. Alright, so starting the run, the first thing you want to do is E and then ult. I do this because E gives you a liberation increase with the Lustrous Razor, and ult to cancel that. Then immediately after I ult, I drop my first hit of DM and swap. After I swap, once Yinlin lands her tagging attack, which gives Concerto, I go for an E, cancel my E with ult, and then follow it up with the second part of E. I do this because I want to build up as much Concerto on Yinlin as I can, while also building her forte bar for a later part of the rotation. Sharp. Okay, so we landed the E and we switch back to Calcharo. Now our goal is to build up 5 killing intents. I do this with my basic combo of 2 basics, dash cancel, 2 basics, dash cancel, 2 basics. There are other combinations you can use. It's just the most comfortable one for me. And then following that, the moment I register that DM, I swap to Verena. I see my way clear. I did miss one slight detail. So going from Calcharo, I did pass over Yinlin. I tapped her really quickly and then to Verena. This is good because it does bring out Yinlin to help her get another tagging attack, which also builds her Concerto. So any opportunities you get like that to slip in another character, because this is also a really useful trick for Changli. Once she has True Sight, you can pass over her, have the True Sight trigger, and you're gone. You don't need to spend any time on her. But in this case, we use it to build some Concerto, go on Verena, and then we're gonna ult on Verena, and then back to Calcharo. Ulting here is also really good because during Verena's ult animation, you do have some iframes, so in many cases it can just be a reason not to dodge. Okay, so once we get this dodge out, I didn't have enough iframes to actually perfectly dodge that, so I ended up dodge countering this attack and then canceling the dodge counter into my basics. Great way to add some damage off from Calcharo in this ult also, if you can manage the time, because it is a pretty good dodge counter. So we do that into our 5 basics and let's see where it goes. Okay, so we got the 5 basics, we got the intro on Yinlin. Once we're at this point, our goal is to trigger Forte, get out. But fortunately, my Yinlin is a 6, so she does get an insane amount of damage on her next 4 basics after ulting, which is why I stood around and did get those autos in before swapping, before sitting and then swapping. So let's see what that looks like.
Keep your fangs sharp.
So we got them in, then we swapped the Verena. On Verena, our goal here is the 1, 2, 3 into E, cancelled by Echo, cancelled by Jump, and 2 attacks. And from there, we swap to Yinlin. We're going back on Yinlin because I would like to build, well, in this case, it was too early to go to Calcharo. I want to be able to have Calcharo enter on a broken boss. That way I have as much opportunity to do lazy DPS as I can. So swapping to Yinlin is great here because I knew she already had a lot of Concerto from the last time I built her up. I didn't completely fill it up on purpose. So when I go back to her, I could fill it up and then have a shortcut to Calcharo. And it's also a good opportunity to toss out both E's, which increases her damage overall and also gives her Concerto, yada yada. So from here we land this
I see my way
outro.
Clear.
What's this, intro? Yeah, we land this intro, and then we did hit him with that E right there and canceled it with a dodge attack, yeah, it's the dodge. It's very tight to pull off tricks like that, but it's actually very useful because it does generate a lot of resources really quickly, especially Concerto. And from there, I'll cancel the rest of her attacks with E and then swap to Calcharo. So on the swapping, okay, normally in this case, this stupid boss, whenever you break him, he steps backwards. Normally what I would do is I would do a first hit of auto, which makes Calcharo walk forward, and then do my first 2 E's. But I believe in this clip, I did end up spawning right next to him, so I didn't need to. Okay, so 1, 2. Here, I cancel the second E with my dash back. Very useful trick because it essentially gives me an opportune window to use my Echo that I would have normally not been able to fit him in and get that electric damage bonus as well as the heavy to follow up what's about to come up in the rotation. So from here, we're going to Echo into the 3rd E. Okay, so we got the Echo off, we got the 3rd E off, then we drop the heavy. As soon as the hits connect, I do ult, which then allows me to capitalize on all of the buffs I've been stacking up during this window, and bam, sweet 90k. So from here, we get our first free DM, and all we do is just DM BA cancels. Okay, so that would pretty much be considered the end of my opener for me. I consider everything up until that point my opener because that is essentially using all of my resources to set up, line up my most optimal damage rotation. Everything after this is essentially just maintenance. Skills, whatever's available, use wisely. The goal is to build up Concerto as much as you can, use the most opportune resources as you can. From here, your goal is to essentially build up Concerto, set up Fortes. So for Yinlin, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to E, I'm going to cancel that with Forte, I'm going to cancel that with ult, and I'm going to cancel, I'm not going to cancel, but I'm going to follow up ult with E. Best way to use all of those skills in succession, shortest period of time, builds up a lot of Concerto, and ultimately it's a best way to use a lot of her damage.
Listen closely, approach me. Something closely. Folks try to treat me like greater than toast me impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm alone. Kicking knowledge on the dimmer level. Make so lyric like a bass with the trouble. Take a deep breath, getting funky as my lungs release a solid rhyme. Slack. Never stop so I continue on. With the first word is white, word is born. I made your imperfection out of doses fantasy. Take a mile in the start. Like me. Listen closely, approach me. Something closely. Folks try to treat me like greater than toast me impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm alone. Listen closely, approach me. Something closely. Folks try to treat me like greater than toast me impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm alone.
Alright guys, and that concludes my Calcharo guide. As I said, it's the first one I've made. It was way longer than I planned on making it, but I figure, you know, might as well make it beginner friendly. I do plan on doing more in the future. I will definitely cut the time down where necessary. I don't think I really need to explain skills and all that as much as I did, but yeah, it was pretty fun. So you guys just let me know, you know, how it was, and I guess I'll see you in another video.
I see my way clear.